What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Tar Heel Illustrated.com. Or, of course, if you are watching on our fast-growing YouTube channel, that's Tar Heel Illustrated. I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner, and joining me from the Smith Center in Chapel Hill, our very own publisher, Andrew Jones. And, AJ, you just saw the Tar Heels pick up a 58-47 win over Boston College on that court right there behind you. It wasn't the prettiest basketball game I think we've ever watched in our lives, and we're going to talk a little bit about that here in just a second. So Carolina improving to 14-6 on the year, 6-3 in conference play. Boston College dropping to 8-11, 3-6 in the ACC. And AJ, like I just mentioned, pretty ugly game, and I think this stat right here is kind of going to allude to just how ugly it was. Pretty wild stat here, too. It's actually Carolina's worst shooting game ever in a win, which is pretty wild. And I think when you dive into it a little bit deeper and you kind of ask the question, okay, why did Carolina shoot so bad? Shooting just 29% from the floor. Interesting enough, second game in a row that their opponent in a win, over a 10-point win, shot higher than them. Boston College shooting 33%, not much better from the floor, just 6% from three. But I think when you dive into it and you kind of ask the question, like I said, why was Carolina struggling to shoot the ball? I think fatigue played a major factor. And I've got a stat here to allude this. I was crunching some numbers because I was curious, but in the Virginia Tech and Boston College games combined, Carolina's starters have played a combined 352 minutes. The rest of the team are guys coming off the bench, which is pretty slim right now because of Anthony Harris not being available for the rest of the year, and Dawson Garcia, obviously, being in Minnesota for some family issues, played a combined 47 minutes. So you got 352 for the starters, just 47 for the rest of the guys. So kind of shows you just how much Carolina is relying on those starters. And you can see it tonight. I mean, they look tired. Mondo in particular didn't have a great game. He looked fatigued at times. I thought Carolina as a whole just looked fatigued, but credit for them to finding a way to win. But pretty wild when you think about it, AJ. Carolina basketball been around for a very long time. Worst shooting game ever in a win. So not great shooting tonight, but they found a way.
And just so people know, we are going to talk about the minutes. I think we're going to do that a little bit later in this when we sort of steer the nose of this podcast toward the NC State game. Boy, the shooting was bad. And the thing about it is you could tell when a guy's a little bit short. Mondo was a little short on some stuff. Brady was short on stuff, a lot of stuff. But it's not just in the shooting. A lot of times people say, well, they're tired, so they don't shoot well. To me, the fact that they were fatigued and not super springy, they're not a springy team anyway, but they were less springy tonight. And you could see it in their cuts, in their movement, in their posting. There were a couple times Caleb and RJ were able to get by guys, but Caleb didn't too much. A lot of that stuff, those floaters and runners, he had a runner off the glass that was really big late. That was actually a nice shot, a nice move, but he couldn't get by the defender. BC, I thought, had more energy, and again, we'll hit on that in a few minutes, but I do think it affected the game a lot because, remember, it was a 26-point game on January 2nd, but Carolina was up well into the 30s a lot. They led by 29, I think, at the half in that game.
Yeah.
And BC was 4 for its first 31 in that game. Tonight, they were 5 for the first 7. So I thought that both teams had energy coming out, but Carolina's dropped a lot. And as BC hung around and they weren't getting blown out, they played with more energy because it was a more positive experience being out there on the court for them tonight than it was Carolina. And I think that affected Carolina's offense. It affected the defense. I don't think it was great tonight, but they did make some stops when they had to make stops late. But part of that, I think, again, was BC, and BC was just brutal shooting the ball in the second half.
Yeah.
Some of the shots, they had a lot of open looks, but I just think that offensively, Carolina was not able to get a lot of the looks they had. They missed a lot of layups. They were 3 for 9 on layups in the first half, 6 for 20 the other night. So in a 3-half stretch, going back to the beginning of Virginia Tech, they were 8 for 28 8 for 29 from the free throw line. So that's bad. And I think part of it was tired, but they weren't as tired the other night. They weren't converting down the paint either. They gave up a lot of points in the paint compared to what they got. It's just sort of a grinded out game. It was not pretty in any way, shape, or form. 29.1% usually means you get blown out. They won because they played a bad team, and they played a bad team that didn't hit shots, and because they were able to kind of grit it out. They improved their rebounding as the game went on. I'm not going to sit here and examine the offense, even though we're talking about offense in this segment, because it was just bad.
Yeah.
They hit 16 shots tonight. They were, what the number is, but they hit 16 shots. They were 16 for 55, maybe, I think it was.
16 for 55, yep.
Okay, well, they hit 6 3-pointers, I think it was. They only hit
6 for 17 from three-point land, yeah.
Okay, so 6 for 17 from 3, 16 for 52. That means that they were, 10 for 38 inside the arc.
Mm-hmm. It's good math.
That's
right
atrocious.
There, too, by the way. It's good math. I wouldn't be able to do that.
Well, it took me 3 times to get their algebra 2 trig, but I finally did it. My offensive coordinator was my coach one year, and he gave me a 7 on a test, and he showed the whole class.
Oh my God!
So I don't think math isn't my specialty, but I do know that I saw a lot of missed shots tonight. Say what?
Yeah, I said not my specialty back in school either. Trust me.
Yeah, and that really did happen too. His name was Morty Bonnet. Anyway,
that's classic.
It was. They weren't hitting shots. They weren't getting good looks. They weren't finishing. They were clearly not. They didn't have a spring in their step tonight. So that equals bad. It was a bad basketball game all the way around.
Yeah.
And credit the fans for hanging in there and kind of giving them a little bit of juice when they could, when the moments warranted. But it was a bad basketball game, but they got a win. And Caleb made a few plays late. Leakey had a really nice putback on a missed shot. Offensive rebound. Hubert has told us a lot. Leakey could be a great weak side offensive rebounder. Well, he was in that situation. And that was a big, big bucket. I think it put him up 7 and forced a timeout for BC. And that was the one time tonight when BC didn't collectively run over to the bench during a timeout to see Earl Grant. They kind of they sauntered, if you will. They didn't really run. They walked. They kind of had that a slow jog, if you will, over to him. And I think that bucket by Leakey was a backbreaker for him. So that counts as offense. So I guess that's the end of the offensive discussion here from tonight, because that was a bad game.
Yeah, if you're trying to study up on offense in basketball, this is not the game you want to watch. Probably the exact opposite. But like I said, credit to Carolina.
This game's not going in a time capsule for anybody.
No. This one will be erased from a lot of people's memories, I'm sure. But AJ, let's move on to the defense. You hit on it a little bit there. I want to dive a little bit deeper into that because it wasn't great. I think we kind of had a similar conversation after the Virginia Tech game too. I didn't think Carolina was great on defense against the Hokies necessarily. I thought they were better, but tonight it kind of the same thing. Wasn't great, but the numbers kind of looking at them make it look pretty good. Like I said, Boston College shooting just 33% from the field on the night, even diving a little bit deeper into it, 21.4% in the second half, held BC to just 16 points in the second half as well, and kind of alluding to how good Carolina was at times, or how they did put some stretches together where they were good on defense. I think throughout the last 4 minutes and 24 seconds of the game, Carolina did end that on an 8-0 run. I know Boston College did miss some shots, but got to give credit to Carolina for playing a little bit better defense there. So not a great defensive night from Carolina from any perspective, but the numbers looking at them, like I said, they make you look pretty good. So you'll take it, I guess, if you're the Tar Heels.
I'm one of those guys that says numbers don't lie. Tonight, I'm going to I think tonight the numbers, they don't lie, but they're misleading, because BC had a lot of success just driving right at Carolina, again, because BC was quicker. They appeared fresher. Even though they played Saturday at home, they beat the Hokies. Monday night, they were in Winston-Salem, got trashed, and they played tonight. So they're playing 3 games in 5 days, and 2 of them are on the road. They haven't slept in their own bed in a few nights. So they had every reason to be exhausted. But I think that when you're a heavy underdog and you're in a game and you look up at the scoreboard and you're sensing your team like they don't have a whole lot of juice, and you're in the game, you could have played a little bit more spunk. Hey, we got a chance to really do something special here, which turn around what happened in Chestnut Hill and get a win here would have been a tremendous reversal of fortune for the Eagles. So I think because of that, they appeared fresher. They were quicker. And I thought that they should have continued to attack Carolina. Carolina was allowing the dribble drive, and not just that, but dump downs and guys down low, taking a couple dribbles on the baseline. Spin moves were there, but man, they didn't convert. They missed a lot of open stuff. Short jumpers. Some of the threes, I thought Carolina actually did a pretty decent job defending the 3. Some were wide open, some were not. They looked uncomfortable. It didn't look like threes that they maybe wanted to take, but they took them anyway. And that's good defense. But late, this was a 3-point game. It was 50-47. I don't know how much time was left, about 4.5 minutes. BC sat there at 47.
Yeah.
Didn't move. And Carolina kind of clamped down, got a few shots. Now, the rebounding got better as the game went on. For a long time, BC had the edge on the glass. It was 9-3 early on the glass. Armando was the only Tar Heel with a rebound like the first 6 minutes of the game. So, defensive rebounding is part of defense because it means you're limiting shot opportunities. And they did a good job getting defensive rebounds, not allowing second chance opportunities. And that's all part of defense. They stepped up, did it late, and they only allowed 16 points in the second half. So we're all going to write about that because the numbers are there. You can't change the numbers. And they got it done when they needed to get it done. This was sort of a war of attrition type game where you find a couple of spots to do the right thing. Caleb get that bucket, Leaky get that putback, get a couple of stops and grab the miss. And that was enough to get a win tonight.
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to dive into some stats real quick before we kind of hit on the last thing we do before we wrap this one up. On some team stats real quick, based on kind of what we just talked about. Boston College shot just 6% from three, like I mentioned earlier, just 1 from 16 from 3-point land. You talked about some of the rebounding stats as well. I know it was close. Carolina just 44-38 advantage in total rebounds. Boston College actually points in the paint was better than North Carolina's, about 12, 30-18 points in the paint. I know Armando Bacot struggles tonight, didn't help with that in terms of Carolina's ability down low. But diving into some individual stats for Carolina, Caleb Love led the way for the Tar Heels with 16 points. RJ Davis, 13.7 rebounds. Leaky Black, 8 points, 4 rebounds. And Brady Manick, 7 points and 6 boards. So like I said, nobody really outstanding in terms of the stat sheet. I know 16 points from Caleb Love was good. I believe he had just, I think, 2 rebounds, 1 assist. So didn't do much more besides that. But you'll take 16 points from Caleb Love in this situation. But let's talk about what this means, AJ. I mean, we always like to wrap this up with that, at least most of the time. Like you said, it's a game that a lot of people probably just get to forget. It's not a game that's going in a time capsule, for lack of a better word. But, a win's a win. And I want to kind of hit on the state game. We talked about fatigue, just to look ahead a little bit. We talked about fatigue early on. I think fatigue for some ways, and I think from a lot of Carolina fans and what I saw on Twitter, some of the criticism of not going to the bench more. And like I said, I know not having Anthony Harris and Dawson Garcia does shrink it a little bit. You don't have as many options on the bench, especially confident options right now, and some of the players that are out there. I think, like I said, I think a lot of Carolina fans think fatigue is and could be a concern going into the NC State game on Saturday. I know you have at least, looking at, plus 48 hours in between tonight and that game, which is a little bit of a positive for the Tar Heels. But for you, AJ, I mean, what does this mean? And do you think fatigue is a concern? Because I think it's a valid question to ask,
Well, what does it mean? They won a game that they had to grind out. If you look at the offensive numbers, when we've seen North Carolina put these kind of offensive numbers up the last few years, the Tar Heels have been boat raced.
Oh, yeah.
And they have not shot well for 4 games in a row, by the way. The shooting is way down the last 4 games. And, if it's not attributed to being tired and all that kind of stuff the last few games, can we attribute it to tonight? Yeah, I think we can a little bit. But I think that this team I think some clubs have figured out a way to keep them out of the lane. We've seen a real emphasis on not just doubling Armando when he gets the ball, but not letting him get the ball and not letting him get it in really good positions. So to answer your question about fatigue, I do think fatigue is an issue. And what is this? There's a lot of things there. I'm going to try to process. Perhaps watching this game has clouded my brain and I can't flow everything out right now. And that's what happened. Some of us were actually joking about that a little while ago. I'll hit the fatigue part first, and then what does this mean, and then state. The fatigue thing is real. We see it out there. We just addressed it already. You read the numbers out. I didn't know that those were the numbers. I hadn't crunched it yet, but that's not a good sign.
No.
Hubert was asked about bench, and I used the bench tonight, and I got good production from him. I thought Puff gave him a spark, but they could have used that spark a couple other times. I don't understand why he doesn't play the bench more, other than just to tell people, look, And we put a little video out on Twitter the other night of Dontrez Styles and DeMarco Dunn getting up some shots after the game. And there were like 25,000 people that watched it. And I don't know how many comments, 100 comments or more at least. Mm-hmm. And most of the people are like, why doesn't he play him more? Well, we're 20 games into the season.
Yeah, 20.
If they're not playing in the rotation, guys, it's not because Hubert's stupid. Mm-hmm. And it's not because he didn't want to win. Maybe they're just not ready. So the fatigue issue and the minutes issue, there might not be an answer for it. We've seen Justin McCoy for 20 games. He missed a couple. We've seen a little bit of Puff here lately. You've seen Kerwin Walton, who's struggled in a lot of ways, made his first free throw of the season tonight in game 20. I don't think there's a whole lot that they can get from the bench other than just get in there and give them some breaks in certain spots, maybe to extend the rest. Put a guy in at the 13-10 mark so the starter can rest then and then through the TV timeout. Put a guy in at the 8:50 mark, same kind of deal. Maybe try to manage your subbing around TV official timeouts. I think that might be something that Hubert can do. But with Garcia gone, and right now we don't know how long that's going to be, and I'm not going to go into any of the rumors that are flying around out there. I will say that I think however long he's going to be out, if we can get sort of a time range, that'd probably help, just because people are saying some stuff right now that they shouldn't be saying publicly because they don't know. They're just speculating. And I think that's unfair to the kid. And Anthony Harris isn't going to be. So you got two guys that can handle minutes and would take a lot of the minutes away from the starters and keep everybody fresher that aren't available. So I think what you see is what you get. I think that's what they're going to be moving forward. And you just better hope that guys like Manek was really tired tonight. He was tired the other night. He was really tired tonight too. So that's the fatigue thing. I think this is the bench thing, the minutes thing. That's what it's going to be moving forward. I don't think people should be harping on it too much because maybe Puff could give them some more minutes than he has. I think that the last couple of games he's played, even go back to Wake, I thought he played well. So maybe turn 4 or 5 minutes into 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 and see what he can do with it. But I don't really think there are many other options right now. And clearly Hubert is making it very clear that DeMarco Dunn and Dontrez Styles are not options right now. Otherwise, he would have been putting them out there. As far as what does this win mean, I think it's a good win because they played poorly in a lot of areas and they were real tired and they couldn't look to the bench to get a reprieve much. They had to fight through it, and they were able to get a win. I know Boston College isn't very good, but this is a club that overcame a 23-point deficit at Clemson a week and a half ago and won. And clubs looked pretty good against Duke the other night. It's not a terrible team. And they beat Virginia Tech the other day. So they're not a rotten team. They're a better team than they were up in Chestnut Hill because they hadn't practiced in a week going into that game because they were dealing with COVID stuff. Mm-hmm. So I think this is a good win because they won ugly. Carolina were winning before. A lot of the games were kind of lopsided and there were pretty elements to the game, especially offensively. That wasn't the case tonight. So you need to win games like that. And I asked Hubert after the game, of course the team's going to be confident and get confidence out of playing well and posting great numbers and looking really pretty out there. But how much confidence can you gain when you don't do a lot of things right? You're sluggish. You're kind of dragging up and down the floor, but you still post a conference win. And he said a lot, especially this group. I think they needed something like this. They needed a tough one the other night they had to grind out, and they needed this as well. They need to win games in different ways, and they did that tonight. So they moved up to 14-6, and I think that's good for this club. Now, looking ahead to NC State, they're going to be challenged because the Wolfpack will, from wing to wing, they'll drive right at you. They got guys that you got to guard, you got to stay in front of. So if there's any semblance of fatigue that surfaces in that game, that could spell trouble for the Tar Heels. It's a losable game. I know that State doesn't have Bates and they don't have the rim protector and it affects the way Kevin Keats wants to play defense. But the Wolfpack is talented enough to come in here and beat the Tar Heels, especially if Carolina's not guarding. So they better get their rest. Tomorrow's a day off. Thursday's a day off for the kids. They come back in and practice Friday. I think it'd be good if it's a mental practice. Get hydrated because they're going to have to play hard and play a lot and play fast on Saturday.
Most definitely. I got the NC State game playing over here. They're actually playing up in South Bend tonight, currently behind by 8 points or about 6 minutes into the second half. So we'll see how that game goes down for the Wolfpack. But yeah, the Wolfpack, the next up for the Tar Heels this Saturday. And obviously we'll be there to cover it. So make sure you guys keep it locked to TarHeelIllustrated.com for all your coverage from tonight games, of course, and leading up to the NC State game on Saturday afternoon in Chapel Hill. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. Appreciate you guys watching and following Carolina's 58-47 win over Boston College. As always, make sure you like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell as well so you know every single time we upload, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks.
Thanks.